Did you know the Tower of Babel story is listed as a myth in the Encyclopedia Britannica? If the Bible's the inerrant word of God, how does a reputable scholarly source such as the Encyclopedia determine it to be a myth? Let's look at the archaeological evidence and see what the experts have to say. Ancient artifacts depicts what appears to be the Tower of Babel with King Nebuchadnezzar on the right, but its 7 layers points to it being a ziggurat. The inscription tells of a Babylonian myth of the god Marduk and building a tower to reach the heavens. Not only are the stories similar, but also the description of being built of brick and bitumen. So the archaeological evidence that closely fits the description of the story of the Tower of Babel is for another god, God Marduk, which predates Yahweh, and by the way is also known for building the gardens, creating mankind, and the holy place. Now let's take a closer look at the Tower of Babel text. The story begins by claiming that the whole earth was of one language. But wait, is that true? Language experts don't find that there was one common language and then all of a sudden many different languages. Instead, it's been an evolution over time into several different branches of languages. So the Tower of Babel account is contrary to known facts about the origin and history of languages, not to mention inconsistent with another biblical description of the origin of languages. And when do you ever see this playing out in real life? When have you ever seen somebody all of a sudden lose the ability to speak their language? And if God had the ability to change language when there was plans being made, why not interrupt plans of torture, plans of bombings? So the story is not true, not original, not the first. So why was this story written? Biblical scholars widely agree that the Tower of Babel story was written as a polemic against the Marduk Babylocentric worldview. Check it out. In the Babylonian myth, the Enuma Elish, Marduk plans the constructions of Babylon. Whereas in the Tower of Babel, the people plan the construction, and it's without Yahweh's approval. So just right there, you can see how it's pitting Yahweh against Marduk. In the Babylonian myth, Babylon's described as the permanent residence of the divine king Marduk, whereas in Genesis, Babylon's presented as a site of architectural failure, and Yahweh comes in and confuses the languages and disrupts the construction. Notice how the text says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." This is evidence of the belief of a pantheon of gods, as was the case in Babylonia. And last, the Tower of Babel story. Babel is another word for Babylonia, which was known as the Gate of the Gods, a sacred place built by the gods. So to call it a tower is to reject that notion. And if you think the Tower of Babel story is God's way of teaching a lesson, the lesson is it's a myth.